I can be still in his presence. Let's look at another one. Psalm 131. The psalm is even shorter. David wrote this one too. It's only 3 verses. He says, "My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me." Now, that right there. I concern myself with all kinds of stuff that are too wonderful, all kinds of things that are too wonderful for me. I ask all kinds of questions I can't possibly understand the answers for. How many times have we seen a situation and said, "God, why?" How many times have we asked God, "Why do you let that happen? Why do you let the bad stuff happen to the good people? Why do you let the good stuff happen to the bad people? Why do you let this stuff happen?" See, God is in charge, I believe that, and the wicked have not yet been judged, so I've got all these questions over here. And the psalmist says, listen, I know this stuff is above my head. If God is really in charge, if he's really supreme, listen, if he created the stuff that we can see, but if he created the stuff that's out there, if he created the stuff that's down here on this earth, if God made all that stuff, if he's that powerful, then there are things about God that I cannot possibly get. I'm not even going to ask. I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm not even going to let it bother me. What he says, verse 2, "But I have calmed and quieted myself. I'm like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content." When I first read this psalm, I was a teenager or something. I went to a Christian school. We read through all the psalms and stuff in different classes. And I read this psalm and I was like, well, I don't get that. I don't know what weaned child is all about. I don't understand that at all. And I'm glad I didn't, because it would have kind of grossed me out thinking about the whole concept. But then I became a dad a few years ago. About 13 years ago, I became a dad. And I learned that there's a whole world of stuff called nursing. And I'm not going to get into any of the other details of that because it still kind of creeps me out. But there are books that are published. There are consultants that you can speak to that will come to you in the hospital, and the consultant will tell you how to do this nursing thing well and how to not do this nursing thing well and all the instructions. And there's all kinds of stuff that I never expected to encounter. I did not read those books. I avoided them, and I did not speak to the consultant. I just stepped back, and I was like, yo, ladies, take care of this stuff. So I had a son, and he was nursed like many children are. And in the process, I began to enter a whole world of learning about things. For example, my wife would talk to other women about their experiences with nursing, and I was in the room. And things like this would happen. And at some points in time, I was at a part of a small group, and my wife wasn't the only one who had a young child. And every now and then, someone in that room would have to cover themselves with a blanket and do the whole nursing thing. And I was like, this is creeping me out. This is weird. And, so anyway, I'm exaggerating a little bit to make this point, that I learned about unweaned children. See, there's a moment in time when a baby is old enough to know what hunger is and old enough to know where the food is, but young enough that the baby still can't feed itself. And it's in that moment when the baby is old enough to know hunger and old enough to know the source of the food that you find a child that is restless. And you find a child that when it's on its mom's lap, its head goes back, its mouth goes open, and that little baby begins to grope with whatever hands it has at the blouse and the shirt of the mom. And it's like, come on, it's time to eat. And I'm like, this is creepy, this is weird, this is crazy. But when the child is weaned, when the child has moved beyond the nursing, and there have been spoons with oatmeal or rice, and there has been an imaginary airplane that has flown it into the mouth, and when the child discovers there's a whole new world of food opportunities and it is weaned from its mother, something magical happens. Before The mom was a source. And now the mom can become a mom. There's a relationship that is now personal. Whereas before, the unweaned child, the only relationship it has with the mom is, you are blessing me again. And if you're not blessing me again, why am I sitting here on your lap? What's the point here? If I'm going to be here with you, you got to be blessing me. You got to be giving me. You got to be giving me. What have you done for me lately? But the weaned child can just be there on the mom's lap, resting, not even asleep, just aware and there and present. And David says, God, I have for far too long been the kind of person who, when it comes to you, I expect you to just give me one more blessing. And the only time I ever come to you is when I expect something from you. And I need you to feed me once again. I need you to bless me once again. I need you to give me one more thing. God, what have you done for me lately? But David says, no. I'm not going to worry about the stuff that's beyond me. I'm going to be like a weaned child, and I'm just going to be with you. So then he calls his brothers and sisters in Israel to join him. He says, Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. Now, there's one more lesson that I want us to pull out of this stuff. And it's actually in Psalm 130. We just go back just a little bit, because something very interesting happens in Psalm 130. You'll notice in Psalm 130 and Psalm 131, they're both called songs of ascents. Those are the psalms that were written for the express purpose of when a person was making a pilgrimage from somewhere in Israel to Jerusalem. When they were on that pilgrimage, that was called their ascent, because Jerusalem was perceived as the highest place. Even though physically it wasn't the highest place, the temple was on a mountain. And so they pictured this idea of they're ascending to the temple. They're going to worship. In other words, just so you know, when you're driving to church next Sunday morning, these are the Psalms for you. They're for the people who are going to the place of worship. Okay, so now let's go to 130. He says this, out of the depths I cry to you, Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. And here, we begin to realize something that we should have recognized all along. Every one of these Psalms that we've been reading, whether they sound like it or not, is actually a prayer. Because this is a guy pouring out his heart to his Father in heaven. And so this time, he's realizing, this is my prayer. God, hear me. Have mercy on me. If you, Lord, kept a record of sins, Lord, who could stand? But with you there's forgiveness, so that we can, with reverence, serve you. And then he says this, I wait for the Lord. My whole being waits. And in his word, I put my hope. I wait for the Lord more than watchmen wait for the morning. More than watchmen wait for the morning. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for with the Lord is unfailing love, and with him is full redemption. He himself will redeem Israel from all their sins. But there's that repeated line in there. More than watchmen wait for the morning. How do you wait for something more than someone else waits for that thing? How do you wait for something more? I mean, is it possible to wait more than other people wait? If you're both waiting for the same, what does that mean? The only thing I could come up with is that when David is talking about waiting, and he's comparing it to the watchmen waiting for the morning, how do watchmen wait for the morning? Well, what they do is called anticipation. See, they've been up all night. They've been on the wall. They've been just waiting until the sun comes up so they can go home. So they can go back, get in bed, have a breakfast, whatever it is. They've been waiting all night long. And so the watchman waiting for the morning is called anticipation. And David says, Lord, I anticipate you with greater eagerness than a watchman anticipates the sunrise. What does that mean for us? I believe what it means is this. David realizes, or whoever wrote this particular psalm realizes, that if God is in charge, and if my responsibility is patience, and my responsibility is to be still, then the only activity I can do is prayer. The only activity I can do is to let God know I'm waiting for him. To let God know I want him to move. To let God know I'm ready. Whenever he picks to do it, I'm ready for him to do it. I'm anticipating, I'm waiting, I'm watching. And so he says it twice, more than watchmen wait for the morning. Lord, I wait for you. I'm waiting for you to move. And so I want to conclude with this thought. At the heart of worship is a prayer that asks God to be God and the patient expectation that he will be. At the heart of worship is a prayer that asks God to be God and the patient expectation that he will be.
Thank you for listening to this message from Lafayette Community Church. We believe that God has a full and fulfilling life in store for you, and we want to help you live it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Pastor Jeff, through the web form at LafayetteCommunityChurch.com. And as always, I encourage you to plug into a solid, God-honoring community wherever you may be. Life is a journey, and no one should ever walk alone.